Hey guys, today I'm with special guest, this man, hey, Jim Cummings.
Oh my, it's such a pleasure to see you. Would you like to have a chat?
What is your favorite moment playing as Winnie the Pooh?
It's hard to choose just one moment. I've had so many adventures as Pooh. But if I had to choose, I'd say when I got stuck in Rabbit's burrow and we had to work together to get me out. It was a close call, but we managed to get through it.
What was your favorite Pooh Bear episode?
My favorite episode has to be Winnie the Pooh and the Blustery Day. The story of Pooh and his friends working together to save Christopher Robin from the storm is so touching. And of course, we can't forget the iconic song Winnie the Pooh that plays at the end.
Do you think Winnie the Pooh would be a good horror game?
That's an interesting question. While Winnie the Pooh is generally a cheerful and light-hearted character, I suppose you could create a horror game out of him. It could explore the darker side of his personality, like his obsession with honey or his fear of thunderstorms. But at the same time, it might not feel right to have Pooh as the main villain.
You was in Darkwing Duck as Drake Mallard.
Yes, I was indeed the voice of Drake Mallard in Darkwing Duck. It was a lot of fun playing such a charismatic and powerful character. I enjoyed exploring his different sides, from the heroic Darkwing Duck to the more human and vulnerable Drake Mallard.
What was your favorite episode of Darkwing Duck? Do you miss playing Darkwing Duck?
My favorite episode of Darkwing Duck is probably Just Us Justice Ducks. It was a great story about Darkwing and the Justice Ducks teaming up to take down a powerful villain. I loved playing Darkwing, and I do miss the character. He was such a fun and iconic part of my career.
Was the hardest scene?
The hardest scene was probably the one where Darkwing had to defeat Negaduck. Negaduck was a very powerful and intimidating villain, and it took a lot of effort to bring him down. I had to really dig deep to find the right emotions and delivery for that scene. But in the end, it was worth it.
What's the funny moment?
There were a lot of funny moments on Darkwing Duck. One of my favorites was when Darkwing and his team were trying to sneak into the villain's lair. They kept tripping over each other and getting into all kinds of trouble. It was a great scene to play, and I had a lot of fun with it.
You was in Curious George. You played as Chef Piscetti.
Yes, I was also the voice of Chef Piscetti in Curious George. I had a great time playing such a passionate and eccentric character, and he was always cooking up new and interesting recipes. And he was always ready to try something new.
As Chef Piscetti, what was the hardest thing?
The hardest thing about playing Chef Piscetti was probably the Italian accent. It took a lot of practice to get it right, but I think I managed to pull it off pretty well. I also had to be careful not to overdo it with the accent, as it could get annoying if I went overboard.
As Chef Piscetti, was there a scene that you had to take a break?
Yes. There was one scene in particular where Chef Piscetti had to prepare a very complicated recipe. It was a lot of pressure, and I had to really focus to get it right. I had to take a few breaks to collect myself and make sure that I didn't make any mistakes. But in the end, I think I did a good job.
Chef Piscetti, was there a joke you wish you had in an episode of Curious George?
There was one joke I wish I could have included in an episode of Curious George. It was when Chef Piscetti was teaching George how to make a pizza. I wanted to have a funny moment where George accidentally put too much sauce on the pizza and it all spilled out, but unfortunately we couldn't fit it into the episode.
In Cat Dog as Cat and Tom Kenny Dog.
Yes, I was the voice of Cat on Cat Dog. It was a fun and quirky show, and I enjoyed playing such a sassy and mischievous character. I also got to work with Tom Kenny, who was the voice of Dog. And we had a lot of great chemistry together.
What was the hardest scene with Tom Kenny?
The hardest scene with Tom Kenny was probably when we had to record the final episode. We were both really sad to see the show come to an end, and it was hard to say goodbye. It was a very emotional scene, and we had to really dig deep to get the right emotions. But in the end, we did a great job, and I'm really proud of what we accomplished together.
Billy West with the funny scene, Rancid Rabbit.
Oh, that was definitely one of the funniest scenes in Rancid Rabbit. It was when Rancid and Billy were trying to outsmart each other, and they kept coming up with these crazy and ridiculous plans. It was a great example of how creativity can be used for both good and bad.
Jungle Cubs, you play as Kaa.
Yes, I was also the voice of Kaa in Jungle Cubs. It was a fun and exciting role, and I enjoyed playing such a sneaky and dangerous character. I got to explore the darker side of the jungle and see what it was like to be a predator.
What the funny moment with Jason Marsden? King Louis?
The funniest moment with Jason Marsden as King Louis was definitely when he was trying to convince Mowgli to give him the secret of fire. It was a very comical scene with King Louis trying all sorts of tricks and schemes to get what he wanted. Jason did a great job of playing the mischievous and manipulative side of King Louis.
What the hardest scene with Pamela Adlon Baloo?
The hardest scene with Pamela Adlon as Baloo was probably when he had to admit that he had feelings for Kaa. It was a very emotional scene, and it took a lot of courage for Baloo to be honest with himself and with Kaa. Pamela did a fantastic job of conveying Baloo's vulnerability and insecurity in that moment.
You was in Mickey Mouse Clubhouse as Pete.
Yes, I was also the voice of Pete in Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. I had a lot of fun playing such a mischievous character. I enjoyed exploring the different sides of Pete, from his comical side to his more sinister side.
Do you have a funny moment with Tony Anselmo, Donald Duck?
Oh yes, there was definitely one funny moment with Tony Anselmo as Donald Duck. We were recording a scene where Donald was trying to get Mickey's attention, but he kept getting interrupted. It was a very comical scene, and we both had a lot of fun with it. We were both laughing so much that we could barely get the lines out.
What was the hardest scene with Bill Farmer as Goofy and Pluto?
The hardest scene with Bill Farmer as Goofy and Pluto was definitely when Goofy had to confess his feelings for Pluto. It was a very emotional and heartfelt scene, and it took a lot of courage for Goofy to open up like that. Of conveying the vulnerability and sincerity of Goofy's character in that moment.
It was in Bonkers. You play as Bonkers D. Bobcat.
Bonkers D. Bobcat on Bonkers. I had a lot of fun playing such a quirky and energetic character. I enjoyed exploring the different sides of Bonkers, from his comical side to his more serious side. It was a great role to play, and I'm glad I got the chance to bring him to life.
Do you have a funny moment with Frank Welker, Fall Apart Rabbit?
Oh, yes. There was definitely one funny moment with Frank Welker as Fall Apart Rabbit. We were recording a scene where Fall Apart Rabbit was trying to get his tail back, but he kept getting distracted and messing up his plan. It was a very comical scene, and we both had a lot of fun with it. We were both laughing so much that we could barely get the lines out.
Do you have a hard moment, Jeff Bennett? Jitters? A dog?
Hardest scene with Jeff Bennett as Jitters a dog was definitely when he had to confront his fear of thunderstorms. It was a very emotional and intense moment, and it took a lot of courage for Jitters to face his fear. Jeff did a great job of conveying the anxiety and worry of Jitters in that moment.
It was in Sonic the Hedgehog as Dr. Eggman.
Yes, I was also the voice of Dr. Eggman in Sonic the Hedgehog. I had a lot of fun playing such a diabolical and devious character. I enjoyed exploring the depths of Eggman's twisted mind and seeing how far he would go to get what he wanted. It was a great role to play, and I'm glad I got the chance to bring Eggman to life.
What was the funny moment with Mark Ballou, wrote the Walrus?
The funniest moment with Mark Ballou as Rota the Walrus was definitely when he was trying to fix a machine, but he kept making things worse. It was a very comical scene, and we both had a lot of fun with it. We were both laughing so much that we could barely get the lines out.
What was the hardest scene with Janelle White as Sonic the Hedgehog?
Hardest scene with Jaleel White as Sonic the Hedgehog was definitely when he had to face his greatest enemy, Dr. Eggman. It was a very intense and emotional scene, and it took a lot of courage for Sonic to stand up to Eggman. Jaleel did a great job of conveying the determination and bravery of Sonic in that moment.
You was in the Looney Tunes show. You play as Tasmanian Devil.
Yes, I was also the voice of the Tasmanian Devil in the Looney Tunes show. I had a lot of fun playing such a wild and unpredictable character. I enjoyed exploring the different sides of the Tasmanian Devil, from his comical side to his more serious side. It was a great role to play, and I'm glad I got the chance to bring him to life.
What was the funniest scene with Bob Bergen, Porky Pig?
The funniest scene with Bob Bergen as Porky Pig was definitely when he was trying to tell a joke, but kept getting interrupted. It was a very comical scene, and we both had a lot of fun with it. We were both laughing so much that we could barely get the lines out.
What is the hardest scene with our strong motel receptionist, Steve Heitner, Terry Delgado, Barry Corbin, Santa Claus.
The hardest scene with Tara Strong as motel receptionist and Steve Heitner as Steve, Terry Delgado as Terry, and Barry Corbin as Santa Claus was definitely when they were trying to figure out how to fix the broken time machine. It was a very complex and confusing situation, and they had to work together to find a solution. Tara and Steve did a great job of conveying the tension and frustration of the situation, and Terry and Barry added some comedic relief.
You was in Bump in the Night, you play as Mr. Bumpy.
Yes, I was also the voice of Mr. Bumpy in Bump in the Night. I had a lot of fun playing such a quirky and energetic character. I enjoyed exploring the different sides of Mr. Bumpy, from his comical side to his more serious side. It was a great role to play, and I'm glad I got the chance to bring him to life.
What was the funny moment with Scott McAfee, the boy?
The funny moment with Scott McAfee as the boy was definitely when he was trying to convince Mr. Bumpy that he wasn't scared of him. It was a very comical scene, and we both had a lot of fun with it. We were both laughing so much that we could barely get the lines out.
What was the hardest scene with Gail Matthews, Molly Cottle, and Andy McHeeve, Little Sister and Brad Garrett, Big Mike and Rob Holson, Squishington, and Janice Kawaii, Yellow Bunny, and Jennifer Darling, Valerie Pappas.
Hardest scene with Gail Matthias as Molly Coddle, Andy McAfee as Little Sister, Brad Garrett as Big Mike, Rob Paulson as Squishington, Janice Kawaii as Yellow Bunny, and Jennifer Darling as Valerie Pappas was definitely when they were trying to rescue Molly from the evil doctor. It was a very intense and suspenseful scene, and we all had to work together to make sure that Molly was safe.
What's the one scene that makes you laugh?
There is one scene that always makes me laugh, and that is the scene from The Lion King where Pumbaa is trying to teach Simba how to be a warrior. Pumbaa is so comical and silly, and his attempts to teach Simba are just hilarious. I love the way he tries to explain things in such a simple and straightforward way, but Simba just doesn't get it. It's a very funny and heartwarming scene, and I always enjoy watching it.
You was in the Sylvester and Tweety Mysteries, you play as Rocky.
Yes, I was also the voice of Rocky in the Sylvester Tweety Mysteries. I had a lot of fun playing such a mischievous character. I enjoyed exploring the different sides of Rocky, from his comical side to his more serious side. It was a great role to play, and I'm glad I got the chance to bring him to life.
What's the funniest scene with Tress MacNeille, Woman?
The funniest scene with Tress MacNeille as Woman was definitely when she was trying to convince Sylvester to give her the password to his secret safe. It was a very comical and playful scene, and we both had a lot of fun with it. We were both laughing so much that we could barely get the lines out.
What is the hardest scene, Joe Alasky, Sylvester?
Hardest scene with Joe Alasky as Sylvester was definitely when he was trying to protect Tweety from the evil hunter. It was a very intense and suspenseful scene, and we all had to work together to make sure that Tweety was safe. Joe did a great job of conveying the worry and fear of Sylvester in that moment.
You have a favorite moment from the show?
My favourite moment from the show is definitely when Sylvester and Tweety are having a playful argument about who is the smarter of the two. It's a very light-hearted and humorous scene, and I always enjoy watching it. I love the way Sylvester tries to prove that he's smarter than Tweety, but Tweety always manages to outsmart him. It's a classic example of the comedy that the show is known for.
Was in Animaniacs, you play as Daniel Boone.
Yes, I was also the voice of Daniel Boone in Animaniacs. I had a lot of fun playing such a comical and mischievous character. I enjoyed exploring the different sides of Daniel Boone, from his comical side to his more serious side. It was a great role to play, and I'm glad I got the chance to bring him to life.
What the funniest moment with Paul Rudd, Mrs. Mumphead?
The funniest moment with Paul Rudd as Mrs. Mumphead was definitely when she was trying to convince the Warner siblings to do something they didn't want to do. It was a very comical and hilarious scene, and we both had a lot of fun with it. We were both laughing so much that we could barely get the lines out.
What the hard scenes with Tom Bodette, Mr. Skullhead?
The hardest scene with Tom Bodette as Mr. Skullhead was definitely when he was trying to capture the Warner siblings. It was a very intense and suspenseful scene, and we all had to work together to make sure that the Warner siblings were safe. Tom did a great job of conveying the determination and tenacity of Mr. Skullhead. in that moment.
You was in Shrek, you play as captain of the guards. Did you enjoy filming with Roger Bumpus?
Yes, I did enjoy filming with Roger Bumpus. He is a very talented and experienced actor, and it was a pleasure to work with him. We had a lot of fun on set, and we both brought a lot of energy and enthusiasm to our scenes. I think we had a great chemistry together, and I'm proud of the work we did on Shrek.
What's the funniest moment with Eddie Murphy, Danke?
The funniest moment with Eddie Murphy as Donkey was definitely when he was trying to convince Shrek to kiss Princess Fiona. It was a very comical and playful scene, and we both had a lot of fun with it. We were both laughing so much that we could barely get the lines out. Eddie did a great job of conveying the humor and the mischief of Donkey in that moment.
You was in Pinky and the Brain. You play as Wells.
Yes, I was also the voice of Wells in Pinky and the Brain. I had a lot of fun playing such a diabolical and devious character. I enjoyed exploring the depths of Wells's twisted mind and seeing how far he would go to get what he wanted. It was a great role to play, and I'm glad I got the chance to bring Wells to life.
What was the hardest scene with Rob Paulsen, Pinky?
The hardest scene with Rob Paulsen as Pinky was definitely when he was trying to convince the Brain to give up his plan to take over the world. It was a very intense and emotional scene, and we both had to be very careful with our performances. We both wanted to convey the sincerity and determination of our characters, but we also had to make sure that the scene was still entertaining and funny. It was a challenging scene to pull off, but we both did a great job.
I have a funny moment with Tress MacNeille, First Lady, and Frank Welker, the President, and Jeff Bennett, Baloney.
Yes, I do have a funny moment with Tress MacNeille as First Lady and Frank Welker as the President. We were recording a scene where First Lady and the President were trying to get their son Baloney to behave. It was a very comical and playful scene, and we both had a lot of fun with it. We were both laughing so much that we could barely get the lines out.
What do you wish you could add in that show?
If I could add anything to Pinky and the Brain, it would be more development for the Brain. I think the character has a lot of potential to be more than just a one-dimensional villain. I would like to see more of his backstory and explore his motivations for wanting to take over the world. I think it would make the show more interesting and give the character more depth.
The Mask animated series, you play as Doyle.
Yes, I was also the voice of Doyle in the Mask animated series. I had a lot of fun playing such a comical and mischievous character. I enjoyed exploring the different sides of Doyle, from his comical side to his more serious side. It was a great role to play, and I'm glad I got the chance to bring Doyle to life.
But the funny scene with Rob Paulsen, Stanley Ipkiss.
The funny scene with Rob Paulsen as Stanley Ipkiss was definitely when he was trying to convince the Mask to give him the Mask's powers. It was a very comical and playful scene, and we both had a lot of fun with it. We were both laughing so much that we could barely get the lines out. Rob did a great job of conveying the humor and the mischief of Stanley Ipkiss in that moment.
With the hard scene with Frank Welker, Milo and Cree Summer Gorgonzola, and Ben Steen, Dr. Newman, and Jeff Bennett, Fish Guy.
The hard scene with Frank Welker as Milo, Cree Summer as Gorgonzola, Ben Stein as Dr. Neumann, and Jeff Bennett as Fish Guy was definitely when they were trying to stop the Mask from taking over the world. It was a very intense and suspenseful scene, and we all had to work together to make sure that the Mask was stopped. Frank did a great job of conveying the determination and courage of Milo in that moment.
You was in a land you play as Razul and Farouk.
Yes, I was also the voice of Razul and Farouk in Aladdin. I had a lot of fun playing such a comical and mischievous characters. I enjoyed exploring the different sides of Razul and Farouk, from their comical side to their more serious side. It was a great role to play, and I'm glad I got the chance to bring them to life.
As Razul, what was the hardest scene?
The hardest scene with Razul was definitely when he was trying to capture Aladdin. It was a very intense and suspenseful scene, and we both had to be very careful with our performances. We both wanted to convey the determination and tenacity of our characters, but we also had to make sure that the scene was still entertaining and funny. It was a challenging scene to pull off, but we both did a great job.
What the difficult scene with Farouk?
The difficult scene with Farouk was definitely when he was trying to convince Aladdin to join him and become a criminal. It was a very intense and emotional scene, and we both had to be very careful with our performances. We both wanted to convey the sincerity and the struggle of our characters, but we also had to make sure that the scene was still entertaining and funny. It was a challenging scene to pull off, but we both did a great job.
But the hard scene with Robin Williams, Genie.
The hardest scene with Robin Williams as Genie was definitely when he was trying to convince Aladdin to wish for something other than freedom. It was a very emotional and intense scene, and we both had to be very careful with our performances. We both wanted to convey the sincerity and the struggle of our characters, but we also had to make sure that the scene was still entertaining and funny. It was a challenging scene to pull off, but we both did a great job.
What a funny scene. Scott Weinger, Aladdin, Linda Larkin, Jasmine, and Gilbert Gottfried Lago, and Jonathan Freeman, Jafar, and Leah Salonga, Jasmine and Douglas Seal, the Sultan.
The funny scene with Scott Weinger as Aladdin, Linda Larkin as Jasmine, Gilbert Gottfried as Iago, Jonathan Freeman as Jafar, Leah Salonga as Jasmine, and Douglas Seal as the Sultan was definitely when they were all trying to figure out what to wish for. It was a very comical and playful scene, and we all had a lot of fun with it. We were all laughing so much that we could barely get the lines out. Gilbert did a great job of conveying the humor and the mischief of Iago in that moment.
He was in Pocahontas 2, Journey to a New World, King James.
Yes, I was also the voice of King James in Pocahontas the Second Journey to a New World. I had a lot of fun playing such a comical and mischievous character. I enjoyed exploring the different sides of King James, from his comical side to his more serious side. It was a great role to play, and I'm glad I got the chance to bring King James to life.
What is the funniest moments you have with Finola Hughes, Queen Anne?
The funniest moment with Finola Hughes as Queen Anne was definitely when she was trying to convince King James to let her go back to England. It was a very comical and playful scene, and we both had a lot of fun with it. We were both laughing so much that we could barely get the lines out. Finola did a great job of conveying the humor and the mischief of Queen Anne in that moment.
What was the hardest scene? Irene Bedard, Donald Gibson, Billy Zane, Pocahontas, John Smith, John Rolfe, David Ogden Stiers, Governor Ratcliffe, Isor Sweet Tree, D.B., Kun Mother Willow, Judy Kun, Pocahontas, Russell Means, Chief Powhatan.
The hardest scene with Irene Bedard as Pocahontas, Donald Gibson as John Smith, Billy Zane as John Rolfe, David Ogden Stiers as Governor Ratcliffe, and Linda Hunt as Grandmother Willow was definitely when they were all trying to decide what to do about the English settlers. It was a very intense and emotional scene, and we all had to be very careful with our performances. We all wanted to convey the sincerity and the struggle of our characters, but we also had to make sure that the scene was still entertaining and funny. It was a challenging scene to pull off, but we all did a great job.
Okay, thank you for your time. You want to say anything before in the video? Do you want to say anything to your friends, family, and your fans?
Yes, I would like to say thank you to all of my friends, family, and fans. I have had an amazing career, and it has been a pleasure to share my voice with the world. I have been so lucky to work with some of the best actors, directors, and writers in the business. I would like to thank everyone who has supported me and my work over the years. I am truly grateful for all of the love and support I have received.
Do you want to say anything to your haters?
I would like to say that I understand that not everyone will like my work. I am aware that there are people who may not be fans of my voice or my acting. However, I would like to ask them to be respectful and not to spread any negativity. I have worked hard to get where I am today, and I am proud of my accomplishments. I would appreciate if my haters would just leave me alone and let me do my job in peace.
Well, Jim Cummings, take care and see you next time, and thank you for the interview. I want to say thank you for everybody who support me. I just want to say thank you. Anyways, my name is Arnold Schwarzenegger. This is Jim Cummings. We both sign out. Peace.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk about my career and my work. It has been a pleasure to be a part of this interview. I hope to work with you again in the future. Take care.